Yeah, so we're going to get going, everybody. It looks like we've got getting on for 100 people on board, which is wonderful. So welcome to all of you. I can't see you all, but I know you're out there. So it's fantastic and that you've joined us, and welcome. A little bit of how this is going to work over the next hour, and just also to let you know that Bryony, who usually directs these calls, is unfortunately extremely unwell. So my daughter stepped into the breach. It's the first time she's done anything like this, so bear with us. I know you'll all understand if there are any hiccups, which I don't think there will be. We have done a little practice, and the way that this hour or so is going to work is with first of all conversation with Judy. We'll then go into breakout groups. Don't panic. This is a very simple procedure for you, and it's a really nice part of what we do. And then after about 10 minutes in those, we'll come back into the main session, and Judy will answer any questions that you have for her. Anna will have received some questions already, but if you want to ask questions as we go along, there is a chat facility for you. Just type in your question there. Anna will be keeping an eye on that. She'll collate those questions, and at the end of it, she'll put those to Judy, and then we'll have a wrap up for getting on towards 5 o'clock. So I hope that suits you, and you're looking forward as much as I am to meeting Judy. Judy is going to be talking about her wonderful book, which is called Act 3, The Art of Growing Older, which she wrote with Adrian. And it's a really, really interesting book, because I feel that we as a generation are incredibly privileged, because we are probably the first generation, and we may be the last generation to really have the prospect of a very fulfilling period of time, which we can call the third act of our lives, when we are perhaps letting go of our work responsibilities and then thinking about all the ways that we can live our lives to the full, with a longish period of I call it leisure time, although that's probably a misnomer for a lot of you, because I know you're very busy. So I think there's a lot to learn about how to have the very best third act of life that we can have, and that's what I want to explore with Judy over the next half an hour or so. So Judy and her husband Adrian, they both coach people. That's what they do, and they're also both writers. So it's from that experience that they've put together this really, really useful book, and it's that I want to talk to you about. So Judy, tell me a little bit about yourself, the fact, you work with your husband, Adrian. Where are you living, and a little bit about your life.
Right, okay, so first of all, thank you for inviting me on today. I'm so excited, and I'm afraid I did this, Tricia. I poured myself a little champagne tea. But I won't touch it till the end. But I absolutely love doing things like this, because my reason for being on the planet is that I love helping people to become the best version of themselves in whatever way makes most sense to them. So at this point, I'm about to be 60, and I have 3 grown-up children who all came back in lockdown. So we had an empty nest and a full nest. And I've been married to Adrian for just over 30 years. And it's very weird for him not to be with me doing this, because all of the talks we've given about our Act 3 work, we've done it together. But he is away cycling. So he would be the only man on this call, I think. But about 7 years ago, we did quite a big Act 3 thing ourselves. We had the chance to build our own house, and that's an amazing thing. We're grateful to have had that opportunity to this very day, and we were able to build a eco home in the middle of Cambridge, where we've lived for nearly 20 years now. And it was very much a future thinking thing we did, and we had to design every centimetre of this house with a view to how do we age here, and what if we need a chair a stair lift, or wheelchair access, Zimmer frames, all of that. So we quite like doing things like that. It was quite fun, imagine what it's like when you're 85, what might you need? So that was a sort of big Act 3 project that we didn't realise that's what it was at the time, but we are still, enjoying having made that big, brave decision. And, there were a lot of risks involved, certainly. So I'm working as a coach.
Can I just interrupt you for a moment and say that I have been to your house in Cambridge, because you actually interviewed me for your book, and you very kindly invited me to go along and have lunch, and I can attest to the fact that it is the most beautiful house. And what is brilliant about it is, as I said, you put in all those principles around it being carbon neutral and just eco everything, but you've ended up with an absolutely beautiful place to live, which is the main thing, isn't it? And at the same time you're living in a way that's compatible with the environment.
Yes, and we never forget that we've been incredibly lucky to be able to do this. There's so many people, thanks to programs like Grand Designs, obviously, who would just love this opportunity. So one of the things we do is that's important to us is that we share it. And what I mean by that is, obviously, if any of our kids need to come back, but also we often have people come and look at it as an example of a future-thinking house in the middle of a very urban environment.
Indeed. So let's come on to the book. So tell me how it all started. Really, your work with Act 3.
Well, it started by an invitation that came out of the blue from some very old friends of ours who lived in Ireland, still do, and they had a collection of friends they'd been together with all since school days, and they were all in their 50s, some early 60s, and it's about 15 of them. They were all experiencing difficulties in their lives, from marriage and relationship problems to addiction issues, and in fact one of them even had early onset Alzheimer's. And this particular couple had the foresight and the generosity to say, listen, I think we need to accept that we're growing older and that we're going to be longer in this age of Act 3, as we call it, which for definition is roughly 50 to 80-ish. It's that 30-year slot. And as life coaches, they said, we need somebody who can sort of help us work this stuff out. Invited Adrian and I to design a weekend, which we did, and it really went very well and was productive. And then we did it again with more people, and then we applied to the Guardian masterclasses. They invited us in, and we've been working with them. We've been in there several times. And out of all that, of course, as writers as well, we thought we ought to turn this into a book, which would enable a lot more people to be able to access both the many stories we put in there of people doing really interesting things in their third act, and also our own coaching tools.
I think what you're saying is really interesting. I met you, I think, first on a conference where I was speaking in Dublin, and it was an Act 3 conference. There's a guy who's in Dublin, and he runs courses similar to the ones I think you run at the Guardian, I think they're actually called Your Third Act or something like that. And he made the point when he opened that conference that sister had retired from a very high level banking job, and the only bit of help that she'd had about the fact that like a week later she would literally have moved from full-time working, fairly high status with a fairly good income, to being totally retired, was one day on finances. It was literally one day on, oh well, these are some of the things that you need to be thinking about with your finances. And it occurred to him, as he was a coach as well, that there must be a heck of a lot of people who find that transition from work into retirement unbelievably difficult. So he set those courses up, and that's what you found with that group that you were working with, who happened to be in Ireland as well. So I suppose that's what I want to talk to you about to begin with, really, is that this transitioning that we have to do, which is the one time in our life where we're not really given very much help or support to go from one part of our, the way that we live, to a completely different part. What do you think the main challenges are from your experience of working with people?
Well, I think for some people, they don't want to think about it at all, Tricia. And there's a great phrase about walking into the future backwards. So many people don't want to face up to the fact that the only thing that is a definite is that you are aging, and that at some point you won't wake up anymore. That is the given, isn't it? And I think as well, what we try and do is to say to people, firstly, yes, recognise how you're feeling, and that we go into this in the book quite a lot about the the losses that you're experiencing, whether it's your waistline or your eyesight, or to loss of status, or feeling sidelined now that you're older, and perhaps people don't really want to include you or engage with you, and that is really painful and hard. And perhaps if you're in a relationship, one of you might be dealing with it much better than the other, and minimize the one who's not dealing with it. So it affects so many big buckets of our life, how this transition can go. And also what we try and do is to say to people, well, listen, you've transitioned in other times of your life, with risk involved. At some point you said yes to a particular job, maybe, or to making a life with somebody else, or to buying a home, and you didn't know 100% how it was going to work out. So think about it. It's another milestone along the way, and it's important to be real about how you feel, but to recognise that you will settle down. It will pass.
I think what's interesting is the fact that we use the word retirement. I think it's a terrible word.
Awful. Ban it.
The French retirer means to withdraw. So, retirement sounds like something where you're going to withdraw from the world and go into another terrible, way of seeing it, God's waiting room. Yeah. In other words, you're active, your life as an active person and an active member of society has ended, and now you're just going to have to go into this place where you're just waiting for the inevitable. And I think in a funny kind of way, our parents were brought up with messages, and I can remember as a child being brought up with messages that retirement was terrible, it was penurious, you didn't have very much money, you were old, you were frail, and you were actually lonely. There were huge messages about loneliness and stuff. So we've kind of grown up with some very negative stuff, I think, around the whole concept of retirement. And that's why I love your book, and that's why I love your whole approach to this, because what you're saying is, hang on a minute, and this is what I feel very passionately, this can be the best time of your life.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
If you look forward to it, if you plan it, obviously you need to have a reasonable level of health and a reasonable level of income, but actually income is less, obviously it's important, but you do less money when you're actually retired, or you certainly can, unless you're going on extremely expensive cruises and stuff all the time. But my point is that we see it as something potentially quite negative. So that, I'm sure, is what's helpful for what you're doing, is that you're changing that narrative, aren't you? Very
totally. And both Adrian and I had very uninspiring models of retirement, really. Certainly my father was an academic, and he just watched daytime telly the moment he took retirement, and drank himself to death, which is a sort of ouchy thing to have to say on a nice afternoon call like this, but that is a really, really big motivator to myself and my two sisters. That is not the way we want to carry out our retirement years. And I completely agree. We really wanted to ditch this whole word. Retirement as a word has retired. And that's why, we call the book Act 3. Act because it's about taking action, but also because it's the third act of your life. And what we would call Act 4 would be when it really is too late to have the opportunities that this generation, you and me, Tricia, we can, and everybody joining in, we've got opportunities that has not been there in previous generations.
Absolutely, and making the most of them. So coming on to the way that you've actually written your book, I really like the way that you've designed it, because you sort of have the concept of a tree, and the tree obviously needs to have roots, and then it has branches coming off it, and then you have, obviously you've got your little leaflets that are growing on the branches. But let's start with the roots, because that's obviously, if the tree has got really good strong roots and is obviously in good soil, then you're going to have a much better chance of doing well. And your sort of 4 roots are to do with purpose, values, key relationships, and attitude. We've got quite a lot of time, but we haven't got a huge amount of time to explore all of those. But I'm really, really interested in this in this sort of concept of purpose. I think the trouble with the word purpose for me is that it's very much associated with business speak in a way. Have goals, objectives, targets, things that you're aiming for. But I think for quite a lot of people, that's a real puts you off in a way, because you don't want to be, you're not in a sort of business environment anymore. But the importance of purpose, Judy, why do you put that down as one of the roots?
It's the reason we get up every day. What is that reason? What are we here for? And I completely agree, Tricia, it can be a very loaded word and perhaps even jargony these days, but more than ever in Act 3, it's time to really think, why am I here? And what is my legacy to myself, to my loved ones, and to the world? And not to be rushed into that or threatened. I mean, some people are bouncing around desperate to fulfill their purpose. They know what they want to do and they're really clear. And I would say to anybody who is sort of put off by that, just sit and wait and ask yourself, what am I here for? What am I here for? What makes me excited and energized? What things do I like to do that I don't notice time passing? That's the sort of things we're looking for, that fulfill us. And we're not talking about lying on the sofa binging TV and eating too many Doritos. That might be quite fun in the moment, but it doesn't satisfy you. So we're looking for things for you to find what really makes you feel that was a day well spent, or an hour well spent. That was me. That makes me not even notice what I'm doing because I'm so into it. And often, but not always, it's very connected to creative outlets. So it might be painting, dancing, singing, drawing, writing, anything like that. If you look at the way children behave before they are getting too old and too cynical, they naturally are drawn into things. And sadly, as we grow older, we stop all of that and we don't let ourselves really explore what we're here for and what lights us up. And I think often it may be your paid work, but it may not be at all. And some of the most contented people we've come across and worked with aren't earning much money at all. They're not driven by that. They're very happy and they're earning very little. So it's not always about money and shopping or travel or anything like that. It can be very, very simple things. It might be spending time with your grandchildren, and there's nothing wrong with that, so long as you feel, yep, this is really me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you sort of encapsulate in the sense that it's a life worth living.
Yes.
That you have a life that you are enjoying, you're looking forward to each day. You have things that I always say you need a better reason to get up in the morning than that you've got a full bladder.
I love that.
But it is, you do, don't you? You do need a better reason than that to get up in the morning. But and it, as you say, I'm so glad you've stressed this whole idea that it can just be something that's pleasurable and creative and so on and so forth. It doesn't have to be a masterwork. You don't have to compose an opera. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It doesn't have to be massive. It's just the thing that really sparks within you a sense of fulfillment and happiness, and it's what you want.
Keep looking. Just keep trying and keep looking, and try not to be thwarted by people who you might think, if you find yourself feeling jealous or resentful about what other people are getting up to, I would encourage you to shut that down, because it really doesn't feed your soul. And the other great thing with Act 3 is that for many people, they've not been finding and living their purpose for the first 6 decades of their life. They've been dancing around to somebody else's tune. And actually, the thing with Act 3 is there's always this risk, as we have to be real about, that the curved ball of ill health could come winging in at any point and knock us out. And we all know that. At this point, I guess most of you on this call have lost somebody too soon, or had someone's life chances really minimised. So I know it's a cliche, but kind of live each day as if it's your last, and keep exploring, try things and see if it fits, try things on and see if they fit you. And I know we were saying earlier, Tricia, that, for you, you're so fulfilled by Look Fabulous Forever. And, you've not only fulfilled yourself, you've also given so much to so many other people. And maybe one day you'll wake up and you'll think, do you know what? It's not doing it for me anymore, and maybe, and you'll know that. I think we're designed to really hear ourselves when we give ourselves permission to listen.
I think what's for me and Look Fabulous Forever is that over the time, what I've been able to do, because I've got thankfully got 2 daughters who are very interested in the business, is to cherry pick. So I really now only do those things that I love. So the things that I've always found in business quite tedious and boring, which is worrying about stock and how many X, Y, and Z we've got on the shelves, and whether that's been delivered to X person and so on. Somebody else does that. Somebody else does all that stuff, which actually drives me nuts. And I love the fact that I get to swan around and just do all those things that I love. And whilst that stays true, I don't think it will lose its shine. It would lose its shine if it was like it was in the first 2 or 3 years, where it was damned hard work and we had nobody. We had a very, very tiny team, so there was a lot to do. Let's move on a little bit. So I'm absolutely clear about purpose, and I love the fact that you said, take your time. It might not be a thunderbolt, it might not, it's just a question of asking. That's what I did. I kept saying, what do you love, what's your passion, what are you passionate about? And to say I'm passionate about makeup makes me sound incredibly trivial, but I did love makeup, and I love that transformative quality, and I just put those things together and came up with Look Fabulous Forever. So you never know what will come out of this, that question. What do you love? What would you like to have different?
And keep asking yourself. I was just going to add to that as well. Ask other people who know you and care about you. What do you think I'm here for? Just play with it and see what they say, because they may see you in a way that you don't realise for yourself, or you don't dare realise for yourself.
Indeed. So now I want to come on to some of those branches that you talk about. So you've got these are the branches in the book, which are home, money, work, play, friends, world, and special branch at the end there. So in as much as we can, let's just go through some of those. So why do you think home is so important as part of this, this Act 3 that we're
we looked at all the big areas of life that are up in those branches that kind of keep us awake at night and that can cause problems or joys. So the idea of the home chapter is, what do you need to do either for yourself, but there's a case study in there about somebody it was all about trying to find the right care home, or retirement home for her elderly parents. And I know quite a few Act 3 people are still dealing with the next layer up. But it needs to be fit for purpose as you get older, and if you have children as well, are you rattling around in the old family home? And one of the videos we did, the Zooms, is on money, and there's a very interesting thought or two there about how things are so different for the next generation down in terms of being able to get on the property ladder. So what do you need to do? So I would say home has to be fit for purpose. It needs rebooting. It needs to serve you as you get older. And if you've got 3 acres of gardening to do, are you really going to be able to do that? And can you pay for someone to help? All of those big questions, ask them sooner rather than later, before it's too late. You don't want to have to think about that stuff when there's a crisis.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think there's a sort of an ideal time to give consideration to this, because, as you say, a lot of people will just, they'll just bury their heads in the sand and say, I can't deal with that now, I can't deal with that now. And then it's either left to their children to try and help them sort it out, or it's left to them in crisis, and the energy that it requires is massive, and then it's really difficult. So these are hard questions, of course, but difficult to think about. What about money? What did you write about there?
Well, when we run live workshops back in the pre-COVID days, we asked people out of all of these topics, Tricia, which are the ones that they worry about most? And health, which is the trunk of the tree, so stabilised by the roots but supporting the branches. Health is one, and money is the other. And actually, the bald truth is, a longer life is going to cost you a little bit more money. So again, burying your head in the sand is not going to make this any easier for yourself, but also your loved ones. So the short answer is, don't be naive and do that with it. Get some advice. There are Age Concern and some of the other charities working with ageing people will certainly give you a hand for nothing. Citizens Advice Bureau, but the more you can gain some knowledge and make a plan, that will be a great relief. Even as you said, Tricia, some of this stuff is incredibly boring, and you don't understand half the pamphlets and things like that. But having come out the other side of understanding your money is a really good sense of relief for you and those who love you.
Yeah, that's all very good advice. And the next one is work. Now, I've chosen to carry on working, and this is something I wrote about in the blog on Sunday, this choice, do I carry on doing some form of paid work, or do I retire? But the conditions under which I decided to carry on working are completely different from how they were when I was younger.
Yes.
And I couldn't work in that way. I couldn't still be working in that way. I really don't think I would enjoy it at all. Having to answer to somebody, being at the beck and call of other people, so that there were demands on my time that I had no control over and so on. That isn't true for me anymore. So I don't think my work is really comparable with proper work in a way. I don't actually think I'm properly working. I think, in fact, the next category is play, and I think I play quite a lot of the time in what I'm doing. But what in work would you say you're trying to help people to think about?
Well, it depends. Obviously, people have got very different situations, whether they're employed or they're freelance, whatever the situation might be. But it's again about thinking ahead and how long are you going to want to work for. It's a game between what you want to do and what you need to do. So the need is partly to do with income, obviously, but it's becoming more and more important to do what's called a phased retirement. So perhaps you might be working, let's say, 5 days a week, and the first step is to cut it to 4 days a week, and then 3, and so on. And so it's not such a brutal shock. But you can become really institutionalized, can't you? If you've been at the same thing for a long time. And we ran a workshop for a law firm, and in the break, this lady came up to me and she said, "You see that man over there? It's my husband. He's retiring on Monday, and I'm absolutely terrified because he had nothing in place at all to fill those, 40, 50 hours a week, more probably with commuting, called work." And she was saying, "Oh, he'll sit there and say, 'What's for lunch?'" And she said, she was busy. She had plenty she was doing. But, work is a massive part of our identity. And if it just cuts you off at the knees like that, and sadly, there are many people who've been made redundant, and that will probably carry on. And sometimes people in Act 3 are going to be in that category. So recognise that you may well need some help to rebrand yourself going forwards if working and earning a living is still something that you really need to do.
Indeed, I'm very conscious of time passing.
Yes.
I can ask you one more thing, which is
Yes.
special branch. So what's that?
Well, everything we could ever do. If we say we think we've covered anything and everything, there's always a special something. So that's the main story in there, is about the value of somebody who has actually never found a partner, and although he didn't want that, it was about being single and being in his 60s, and the way in which he hadn't given up on it completely, but it was about the difficulties of that, but also the assets to that, and that he has more time than a lot of his coupled up friends, and he's become a really good listener to some of his friends' children who can't quite say that thing to mum and dad, but they can talk to him. So that was the sort of example, but it could be anything that just for you, when our tree model doesn't quite fit in one of the categories.
Okay, that's really, really interesting. And just to finish on how you end it, you end it with what hurts and helps the tree. So let's think about some of the things that hurt the tree.
Well, it's dealing with the reality of loss. So we touched on this earlier about physical, mental, and emotional, psychological loss that we experience when we look in the mirror and think, "I've got to pluck that thing out of my chin. What is this horrible body doing now?" But also a sense of purpose, or plans and expectations. We interview a couple in that bit who one of their sons became really ill, and out of nowhere they became the main carers for their grandchildren, which is, they thought they'd go travelling, they thought they'd visit friends, do nice things, and they became full on carers. So that can be loss, and also fear. So when we're fearful of trying something new, doing something that feels brave or scary, I should say, but fear and loss really stop us having the Act 3 we could. So look out for what's stopping you, perhaps recreating the kind of life you need and want at this stage.
And the things to help the tree?
Planning. So planning is everything. And it's so interesting, Tricia, because some people love planning. You know, they're mind map people, they're list people, they love thinking about next summer or whatever it is. And some people just are like this. They can't even begin. They're spontaneous. They like to not be, as they would think of it, pinned down. But the reality is this is the time in your life when perhaps for the first time you're going to have to embrace some plan making. And if that's the case, if you're one of those people who doesn't like it, do whatever you can to make it interesting, creative, fun, share it with a friend, so that you're not underlining for yourself how, "Oh, I don't like doing this at all." So reboot it. And also assets. So obviously a better house, money organised, you know, those kinds of cool things sorted out. But intangible things or invisible things like your attitude. And there's a lot in the book actually about how a positive, constructive, open-minded, flexible attitude will really support your tree. It will support your Act 3.
Really interesting. I made a really difficult decision this year that I'd put my French house on the market, and when I was there I had a lot of super troopers saying to me, "Oh, don't do it, don't sell it, it looks amazing, and you know, it's obviously a huge part of who you are," and so on. And it is, and it has, and it's been a massive part of my life for 20 years. But I do think that now is the right time, and it's part of that planning that I'm trying to do, to ask myself some really challenging, difficult questions about you know, what I want over the next 5-10 years. And I'm trying to think in terms of, you know, one door closes, if I do sell it, one door closes, other doors will open, rather than, and a bit of an end of an era, but in order to open up something new. And I'm trying to conceive it in a positive way, and who knows what's going to happen. I still don't know, so it's just out there at the moment. We'll see what comes back. But Judy, thank you very much. We're going to go down into our breakout groups now. At this point we often have a lot of people disappearing, but please don't disappear, because this is the fun, you know, this can be the fun bit as well. What will happen is that Anna will start to put us into our breakout groups, and a pop-up will come onto your screen and it will say join, you know, such and such a group now. Just click on that and you'll find yourself with about 5 or 6 possibly other people. Just introduce yourselves to each other, and maybe have a conversation about retirement, about Act 3, anything that we've been talking about that's interested you and made you, made you think about things perhaps in a different way. So that's going to be what we're going to be talking about. And then after about 10 minutes or so, there'll be another pop-up on the screen. It will tell us that we've got a minute left, and then we'll come back into the main session. So we're going to do that now. As I said, please don't all disappear, and I'll look forward to seeing you again in about 10 minutes or so, when we'll ask Anna will be asking Judy lots of questions that you've been asking. So over to you, Anna. Okay, we're all back. Lovely to see all of you. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I had a lovely group, and lots of things came up in that discussion that we had. And the word confidence got talked about, you know, the confidence to do stuff. And we were talking about the importance of, you know, taking some kind of action, actually, you know, even if it's a small step, just doing it. So we've got an opportunity here. We're going to go to Anna. That's she's been called Bryony Lockhart, but she's not Bryony Lockhart. She's Anna Custard, and she's going to now talk to Judy and say what questions we've had in. So over to you, Anna.
So this is one that was in the chat from Eileen. So Eileen says, what should you do if one of you is a planner? That's her, and one of you doesn't like planning, which is her husband. How do you reconcile those two things?
Yes, very common, that one. Funnily enough, in the group I was in, we were talking quite a bit about what partners or husbands want to do in Act 3, and what if you don't want to do what they want to do. So sort of similar territory, really. So I obviously I can't answer everybody's individual situations on this call, but I think the most important thing you can do with a key relationship, whether it's a marriage or a child or whatever it is regularly give it an MOT. In the same way as we fix our boiler and our car, and look after those, because they're really problematic if we don't look after them and they go wrong. And we pinched this idea from a lovely, wise old couple who told us many years ago that they block out a day every year where they go away and they draw up an agenda each, and they make sure it's out of the home, and they look at the big areas of their shared life together, whether it's finances or their relationship or things that need doing in the house, or the way they're treating each other. So some quite relational things, some quite practical things, but they commit that they will end on a good note, and they also start on a good note. Whether it's a style thing, like I'm a planner, he's not, or whether it's the marriage or the partnership is old and stale, the chances are, if you actually think, do I really think I want to do the next 5 years, 10 years, till death us do part with you, give it a clean up regularly. So have that day away and say, you know, I'm finding this really tricky because I really want to plan and I can see you're resisting this like mad. So how do we meet in the middle? So keep talking, keep asking, but don't get into whinging and nagging and, oh, you never listen to me and all that kind of moany, destructive chat, because you've lost them. Don't. But if it's about this is something I think we could do better on, and I think we both deserve that, don't we?
I think
an MOT.
That's like great advice, however old you are.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And sometimes it's painful, you know. But you need to face some of the home truths in a way that, in a setting that is all right and supportive, rather than, you know, mudslinging at 11 at night when you're tired and it's all horrible.
Somewhere where you can't throw things at each other.
Yeah. Yes.
And then someone else, Mary, sent this in before, saying she's really dreading retirement. She's been incredibly busy at work, and it's meant that she hasn't had time to focus on friends or hobbies, and she's worried about the abyss that might lay ahead. Have you got any advice?
Oh, well, thanks for your honesty. I really appreciate you being as brutal as that, because that must feel awful. I think I'm wondering if you might want to start with a first small step, which is perhaps to give yourself just half an hour, maybe if you can grab half an hour at the weekend, to begin that process in whatever way feels like you. So is it a big piece of paper? Is it felt pens? Is it a mind map? But just, we talked in our group about what we call sometimes the rocking chair conversation, where you visualize sitting in a rocking chair way into your 80s, maybe 90s, when your choices and opportunities have perhaps really gone by then compared to where you are now, and you're looking back and you're looking at what you got up to after you had, how can I not say retired? Oh, yes, started Act 3. How should we put it like that? So have that rocking chair moment of when it's too late and I'm looking back, what will I be really glad that I did? And think about it, obviously attached to the purpose stuff we've talked about this afternoon, but also your values, that it's done in a way that's true to you, not a shoulding of I should be doing that or I should volunteer. We were saying in our group that we have that loud message sometimes from a parent, even if they've been dead for 25 years, still saying, oh, you're no good at that kind of thing. So anything like that that gets in your way, now is the time to say, no, I'm going to start from scratch and I'm going to look at what I want to do this time. But yeah, you need to be honest about how you feel, because falling into that abyss is obviously a powerful thing. But you've got a chance, small step, to do something about it.
And then there's one in the chat from Fiona saying in their group they were talking about U3A, but also how people can plan in these this difficult time at the moment with COVID. It's obviously creating a lot of uncertainty, and it affects this older age group more than younger age groups. Have you got any advice for dealing with the kind of anxiety and sense of unknown that COVID can generate?
Yeah, anxiety. I mean, it's been the weirdest time, has it not? I sometimes think if I hear the word unprecedented one more time, I'm going to throw something. But it has ramped up people's anxiety. And of course, people in the Act 3 decades are, the older you get, the more likely, all of that. But I think what you focus on is what flourishes. So when you notice that you are focusing a lot on how worried you are or what you can't do, I think maybe have a word with yourself and see if you can start thinking about what you actually can still do. Can Can I Zoom my grandchild? I mean, yes, of course, I'd rather be with my grandchild. Can I just phone them up? Can I write them a letter and put a stamp on it? You know, there's nothing so lovely as getting something in the post. But definitely, there are things that we can all be doing. I mean, I'm actually going to go to university next month, and I'm going to be starting on Zoom, and I've got to accept that, you know, for the whole of this year coming, it might be only on Zoom, which I'm heartbroken about. But I can't control anything there. So where you've got control, there you've got some choice. If you can't control it, don't let it eat you up, because it really isn't worth it, and you've got better things to put your mind and attention to.
And there's another Jane saying, they say the key to happiness is A, something to love, B, something to do, and C, something to look forward to. She says, is this enough?
I think it might be enough for you. You know, I think there's a Japanese model in the book called Ikigai, which I know, Tricia, you're a big fan of, which is a model. It's a 4 overlapping circles thing, which you can try that model, and I won't go into the detail because it doesn't really work to just sort of chat about it. You need to look at it. But I think any of these things that help you, great. I'm a great believer in noticing what's coming at you, whether you've read something or heard something or seen it in somebody else, and think, does that help me? Great, I'm going to go after it. Or does it hurt me? Right, over there. So help or hurt. I work a lot with parents. There's another job I've been doing for years and years, helping them to work out how to have a better relationship with their children and not, you know, yelling and shouting and moaning. And a lot of it is about what's helping here and what is hurting. And just that help or hurt can be a little trick that might help.
That's great. Tricia, do you want to go back to more detail on Judy's book, where to get it, all that kind of stuff?
Indeed, I can. Yes. So let's wrap up now. Thank you, Anna. And so Judy, would you just like to wrap up? Talk us through your book,
okay.
how to get hold of that, because you've got a special way to do that.
Yes, we do. So in essence, you can buy it from all good outlets, as you would imagine. But also, if you go to our website, act3life.com, we will post it to you in the UK for £10, including postage, which is a bargain. And just ask us if we need to send it overseas. So act3life.com. We are deeply available for coaching weekends in beautiful parts of the world if you would like to invite us to come and run something for you, and also individual coaching as well. And on our website, one of the things that happened was that in lockdown we launched the book, and we did a weekly topic from here with dear Tricia, did a brilliant one on work. So 14 Zooms you can watch there, which is like your last question there was, what can I do? How can I have, you know, good things to do? University, third age, all sorts. But yes, 14 Zooms you can watch.
Okay, somebody just asking, will the website be on the follow-up email? We'll make sure that we publicise your website widely. Don't worry, we'll make sure that you know where to get that to. And you were saying, Judy, just this weekend you had a couple come from Clapham out to Cambridge, and you gave them lunch. So always of interest as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. And but you had a really good session with them.
We did, yes. So, you know, Adrian and I coach together, but we also work with people individually. And he has a specialism historically with business owners, and me with mums and dads. But we've had obviously a lot of work in the territory of how do I create and plan for a great Act 3.
Brilliant. Judy, thank you so much. The people in my breakout group thought that they loved you and had found it really interesting and helpful. So, and you know, it's been a lovely session. Thank you very, very much indeed. And we'll make sure that your website is widely shared amongst our group. Thanks all to you for joining us. We've had a really good group in today, and really, really always appreciate you coming. And I do hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. And I just like final thank you to Anna, who didn't have either a nervous breakdown or any kind of technical breakdown, which is so well done.
I need a glass of fizz now too.
Yay!
Yeah, go and break out the bolly, darling. Okay, bye everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.